Great. Well, thank you all so much for joining us for today's webinar, How to Build a Professional Network. Learn the importance and value of building a professional network. It goes beyond LinkedIn and large gatherings of people with stickers that say, hello, my name is. Although we are taught to control what we can control, the stark fact is that much of our success and satisfaction cannot be done alone. So let's concentrate on what can be controlled in our immediate environment. We need a sphere of influence to get past the potential roadblocks in front of us. Participants will walk away knowing how to make genuine connections, not name gathering or meeting checklist accomplishments that will spur future relationships to advance their careers. Participants will learn key concepts of professional networking, including influencing key decision makers, driving your own career, allowing the network to do much of the work, breaking out of traditional hierarchical business models, and the fact that networking is not as bad as you think. And so this presentation is led by Tom Dowd, who's a prize-winning speaker, award-winning author, and trainer, all spurred by his need to be more than a painfully shy and introverted individual on the roller coaster ride of success. Tom found his success by taking control of his personal and professional life. He's a member of Toastmasters International, National Speakers Association, Maine Career Development Association, as well as the Maine Adult Education Association. He's the author of 5 professional development books on public speaking, professional transformation, job search strategies, and time management. All, by the way, which are available on Amazon under the name Thomas B. Dowd III at discounted prices. And Tom has been in the banking and customer service industry for over 30 years. Back in 2013, he lost his job due to cost cuts, but landed a better job in just 59 days using strategies from his book, Displacement Day, When My Job Was Looking for a Job. So all 30 of us or so, or 25 of us or so, let's give a big virtual round of applause to Tom for joining us here this afternoon. And Tom, you can take it away. Thanks so much.
Robert, thank you for pitching the books here. The Displacement Day, When My Job Was Looking for a Job, was written through notes that included people that went through this job seeking group. I had lost my job while I was going to job seeking groups in Massachusetts and beyond. And I ended up taking notes during that time, and I shared a lot of the ideas that were discussed, plus some of the ideas that were working for myself. So again, thank you for doing that. And when he says discounted prices, we're talking like 99 cents for for digital books, ebooks and stuff. So that's about as salesy as I get. Here we go. The opinions expressed here are my own, or not necessarily that of my full-time gig. But in the book, The 29% Solution, Ivan Misner surveyed over 2,200 business professionals, and he noted that 87% of them said that there was no mention, no class, nothing about networking in college. Yet 73% of them said that their own personal and professional success was directly linked to their ability to network. Eisner also goes on to talk about this myth of the 6 degrees of separation. You might know it as the 6 degrees of Kevin Bacon. Well, what this really was is Stanley Milgram in the 1960s and 70s would do these small world experiments. He'd have someone from one side of the country send a letter to someone on the other side of the country that they didn't know. And it took on average about 5 or 6 connections for the letter to get to its intended target. What gets lost in translation is that only 29% of the letters got to where they were supposed to go. The key here, the point is that networking, it is constant and it is proactive. And the 29% who do it well will make those connections, will build bridges, and they will learn how to successfully land the job, get the big promotion. But most important of all, build mutually beneficial relationships, because that's what networking is. Networking is all about making that connection and building a relationship. And that theme is going to permeate through all of what we talked about today. But I do want to talk about what networking is not. Networking is not kissing up. It is not intentional job shopping. And for everybody who's on this job seeking network are like, whoa, what just happened here? It is not walking into a room that says hello with a sticker that says hello, my name is. It's not having the most connections on LinkedIn. It's not having the most business cards. It's about building bridges, connecting dots, getting things done, finding integration points. And yes, if you are looking for a job, making yourself better in the eyes of that decision maker. But networking only works if you are currently employed or you have other employment that you're working on. Make sure that you continue to do your day job well if that's the case. When I do this for a lot of internal companies, we talk a lot about networking here, but it's not the sole thing that will lead to your success. But there are a couple notes that will. 80 to 85% of all hires are based off of someone you know or someone who knows someone you know. And I've been doing this since 2008, formally. And since 2008, I've done a lot of networking sessions multiple times per month. And the question I got over the last 3 years was, well, how am I supposed to do this now? I'm in the middle of a pandemic and everything's virtual now. And the answer is, yeah. Do it virtually. Networking isn't about going to lunch, grabbing a drink, going to dinner. That's the old traditional way of networking. Now, if someone asks you to go out to lunch or dinner or grab a drink to network, the answer is always yes. Sure, absolutely. But don't put your blinders on to think that's the only way to network. We have Zoom and WebEx and all these tools in front of us. Do it by phone. And 99% of everything I've done since 2008 has been done over the phone or video. 99%. So before the pandemic, I was doing virtual. It makes it more convenient for people. But we have this, I call it societal willingness to socially network. And I like to call it keyboard courage. We hang out with the billions of people on Facebook, the 500s of millions of people on LinkedIn, and we're willing to connect with hundreds, thousands of people that we don't know because we're behind a keyboard. But if I was to ask you to pick up the phone and talk to someone you don't know, I get the, whoa, hold on a second, that's outside of my comfort zone. Well, why? If you're willing to connect with all these people on LinkedIn, they're there for a reason. Do something about it. Keith Ferrazzi writes in his book, Never Eat Alone, build it before you need it. Now, if you're at the job seeking group, you probably have some need for a network, but it doesn't make it too late either. Because after I received my job offer, I had multiple networking sessions still remaining, and people said, congratulations, I guess we can cancel. And the answer was no, I'd like to continue to build the meeting because remember the goal is to build the relationship, not land the job. So it's important that you remember that even as you succeed in your job search, networking doesn't stop all of a sudden because you got a job. Well, I read an article by Harvard Business Review, and they mentioned a guy by the name of William Dawes. Does anyone know who William Dawes is? Anyone? No? Any historians? Okay. William Dawes had a counterpart. His name was Paul Revere. Now, they were both asked to announce that the British were coming. Paul Revere went north. William Dawes went south, both figuratively and literally. Who was the better networker? Paul Revere. Everyone knows him because of the poems and the history books that are out there, but William Dawes isn't really well known out there. When people are sitting around a table, whether it's talent planning, succession planning, calibration sessions, if people have gone through this litany of interviews and they're sitting around making the final decision, is your name coming up? And if it is coming up, is it coming up in the way that you want your brand built? You have to really ask those questions. An opportunity seldom labels itself. You have to take your career into your own hand, which means you have to drive your networking and drive everything about your career and not expect someone to tap you on the shoulder. If they do, fantastic, that's a bonus. But you need to drive everything. I was working for a guy by the name of Jim, and this guy, we worked really well together. He got moved down the hall to run a business. And I asked if I could come along with him because it would have been a good change for me to work with some younger managers. And he said, yeah, that'd be great. So I went down, and after a few weeks, he said, how's everything going? I said, it's great, except the reports are never on time and they're never right. He said, okay, go on a 90-day task force and go find out. So about a week before I went on this task force, I was on vacation about 800 miles away from home. and across the scroll on the news channel said that my company was just bought. So here I was on a task force, a potentially redundant position, definitely not a permanent position, and the organization grew from 28,000 to 285,000 overnight. I had no choice but to understand the power of networking. Well, 2 years later, because it did become a permanent position, I went from managing 150 people to managing 5. We were responsible for the reporting and the incentives of 10 different sites for 3,500 people. 3,500 people, we were building their incentive plans and reporting out on. We were hitting people in the wallet. We had to gain their buy-in. We had to know that they were part of the process. We needed to make sure that the managers were actively involved in doing this and getting engaged. That is also networking. So when you land your jobs, it's important to remember to continue to build that network internally so you can make those connections and build those relationships. Well, things were going well enough there that I was tapped on the shoulder. And they said, Tom, we've got 2 positions available in Rhode Island. You'd manage as many as 750 people. So I went down, went through 8 hours worth of interviews, raked through the coals, and they called me up and they said, Tom, guess what? We loved your interviews. We loved the strategy, but you're number 3. We had no idea who you were. We didn't know who you were. We didn't even know who your manager was. We took 2 people that we were very comfortable with. Well, now I have nothing to lose. So I said, can I meet with the hiring manager post-interview? And we ended up meeting several times and built a strong enough relationship that 6 months later, he calls me up and says, Tom, guess what? One of them left. The job is yours. And I said, that's great. Thank you so much, but I can't take it. We had built enough of a relationship that I could actually say no. Just a few days before, I had overheard a conversation in the hall that they were looking for a 1-person task force to resolve some voluntary attrition. And seeing a message, I just want to make sure it wasn't an immediate question. That when we were looking at this 1-person task force, I ended up taking that, and I couldn't solve this attrition. By the way, the attrition wasn't caused by the reporting or incentives. It was that same 10 different sites. But I had to meet with someone from HR. I met with people from compensation. I met with the managers. Why are they staying? Why are they going? I met with the people that were doing the job. Why do you like it? What motivates you? What are you hearing from your peers? Looking at the exit interview. So collectively, this 1 person grew exponentially, and our attrition rate was 45% when I started. And it went down to the low 20s in less than 9 months, not because of the work that I did, but the work that we did collectively as a team. And that's what networking does. It puts out fires, it gets things done, but it also allows you to meet people. And that's how I met Kathy. So when the task force was over, I ended up working for Kathy. And about 6 months in, we were going over my performance appraisal. And Kathy said, listen, Tom, I want to share a story with you from her manager, from her mentor. And her mentor said, listen, they were sitting around doing talent calibration, and Kathy, your name came up. And your manager did this. Folded her arms, didn't say a word. Are all of your eggs in one basket? Are you expecting that 1 person to help land you that job or do that one thing for you? You have to broaden your advocacy. You need to broaden your network. So Kathy says to me, Tom, all right, we get to the next level and your name came up. There's 15 people sitting around the table. How many of them do you know? Well, 11 of them came from the legacy company. So I said, 11. She's like, that's great. Of those 11, how many of them can you pick up the phone and have a real life conversation with? And that number instantly dropped to 4. Kathy said, yeah, I had some work to do. There were 11 people sitting around a table that were going to make decisions on my career, and they had no idea who I was. I needed to do some work. And from that day, and it was 2008, from that day forward, at least once a month, I'm meeting with 1 person that I don't know. It's more along the lines of 2 or 3. And when you're in job-seeking mode, you should make whatever cadence you want. When I was looking for a job, I would send 20 notes out a day So mine was on a daily basis, sending 20 notes out. But you can do it every Friday or whatever it wants. But it's important that you get into a rhythm and a cadence with your networking strategy. But how do you start? Well, when you don't know where to start with HR. If you go into LinkedIn and you're interested in a company, bring up that company name and look for the people that work there. And you'll see a link right underneath their name of depends on the company, but the number of people that work there. Click on that link and go through it and look for someone from HR, from recruiting, someone from talent planning, and go in and connect with them and ask for some time on their calendar. I met with a couple of people from HR because they have this 30,000-foot view of the organization. They have this broader view that you don't. They know what the organization wants and needs. They know people that you don't. And when they get to know you, they can then take your passions and interests and skills and match them up with the company and put them together. But it's important that you have some type of variety to your networking strategy, because everything that we've been talking about so far are people that I don't know, HR people. But you have a group of people that you do know, past colleagues, past mentors, past managers, past people that you've dealt with through volunteering. You've got a group of people that you can go back and revisit them. It's important that you meet with them, but it's also important to meet with people that are decision makers. And that's one reason why I started to meet with people that were 2 levels above me. And the reason why I was doing that is I wanted to get to influencers. Now, I grew up painfully shy and introverted, and this networking thing it was not comfortable for me. But I figured by doing it more and more, I gained a little bit of confidence. And that's exactly what happened. The first couple were brutal. But the third one, I got a little bit more comfortable, and I kept building that confidence along the way. So it was working in what I wanted to accomplish. But along the way, I was also meeting with decision makers and influencers. And by doing that, I started to build out relationships with people that were mentors, that were sponsors, that were advocates, all of which, by the way, are different. But a lot of people started to want to continue on with this relationship and continue to build that, which means that I now had multiple people in my corner making phone calls for me. But again, it's important that you talk to people that you don't know, because they are very important to you, but also people that you do know. And I ended up meeting with a woman by the name of Shelly. Now, Shelly and I had worked together. I used to work for Shelly, and she was fantastic. She ended up getting promoted, and we stopped working together. But she was still internal to the company. But when you're talking to people that you know, you can get past the niceties of, tell me a little bit about yourself. She already knew who I was. She just didn't know what I had been up to over the last 4 years. But you can have a deeper conversation and reinvent yourself and reconnect with that person. Because I had this roller coaster ride of a career as I was working for her, but I had blossomed over the last 4 years. I wanted her to know about that. But more importantly, I wanted to have that deeper conversation. And I asked her, why am I always moving side to side to side? I'm never moving up. She said, because you roll up your sleeves, you clean up everyone else's messes, and you get the job done. Everyone sees you as a doer. People don't see you as a leader. And after just getting smacked between the eyes, I started to figure out she was probably right. And I needed to change that up. So I was able to ask the question, what can I do, maybe we do, to help change that and build some strategies around it, around riding the coattails of others, giving credit where credit was due, stop micromanaging. And those things led to me getting my first executive level promotion about a year later because of this conversation. I don't care how many years it's been since you've talked to somebody. I don't care if it's 5 years, 10 years, 20 years. If you have their contact information, reach out to them. What's the worst thing that's going to happen? They say no, or they ghost you. So what? You've got plenty of lists out there that you can get in touch with. Keep reaching out to them. You'd be surprised. The reminiscing actually helps bring you back together, and you'd be surprised at how many people are more than willing to help you out. But it's important that you continue to go back to previous trusting relationships so you can have that type of conversation. But let me give you some real life applications. I lost my job on June 6, 2013, a day I affectionately called D-Day, or Displacement Day. I ironically had a speaking engagement later that night at a place called Jobs for Maine Grads. I couldn't go home after I lost my job. So what did I do? I packed up a box. And then I took all of those files of all the people I had networked with over the last 5 years, put them on top of the box, and made my first phone call as I was walking out the door. I get to my car, I put the box in the car, and I drove a quarter mile up the road and spoke to an old manager. In less than a half hour, I had networked twice after losing my job. And the message here is there is no better time than the present than to start networking. And the other point is just go ahead and do it. What's the worst thing that can happen? And the answer is not a lot. You're in search of a job. You're in search of building relationships. That's all that it's about. And there's a lot of people that are out there that are willing to do that. But if you were to say, Tom, you have to bet your next year's salary on the one person that would have helped you out and go all in, I would have lost. There's reasons for that. First of all, too many times, the people we have connections with, our interpretation of that loyalty or relationship is different than their interpretation of how close we really are. And it's going to vary and it's going to change. So you have to test your reliability. You have to test your predictability. You have to test your assumptions. You have to bring yourself relevant back in the eyes of that person you're working with. But you're talking to people that are really busy. A lot of people are like, gee, I'm sorry, I don't have time for this. How many people are doing more with less and they're too busy to work? It happens. But you're also getting a group of people in a lot of cases that are too scared. And what I mean by this is I lost my job during the Great Recession. We're 3 years into a pandemic. And what happens is people internalize and they start worrying about themselves and their family. And by the way, there's nothing wrong with that. But that willingness to help has a little bit of friction a little bit more than it's had in the past. But over time, once you walk out of a building, that loyalty you think is there is going to break free a little bit. It's for you to bring back together and build that relevance. There's a reason why LinkedIn tells you when it's somebody's birthday. They tell you when it's somebody gets a new job or gets a promotion. They want you to stay connected and stay relevant. Now, this is what I will tell you. When they change jobs or get a promotion, don't be one of 100 people that writes a message that says, congrats, congratulations. Don't be that person. Not because I don't want you to celebrate, but for people that you really care about or feel that you have some type of connection with, build that relationship. Don't be just a congrats person. Be a person that sends them a personal note on why you think it's pretty special that they did that. And send them a note as to why it's important in your eyes, but don't do it that day. I usually put it like a week or two later, and I send them a personalized message, not through the group chat, but through a personalized message to that individual on LinkedIn. Or if I see a random article that makes me think of someone, or I get this random thought about someone, I'll send them a note as well. And again, it's that relevance. Networking isn't just about that conversation. It's about the relationship that you can continue to build. Nurture your relationship. But it's also about secondary contacts, because there are people that are out there that you want to get to the decision maker, and your primary contacts, in a lot of cases, can point you in the right direction, but are not the final decision. You want to get to secondary contacts because they have this objective point of view. If they agreed to meet with you because John said that you'd be a good person to meet with, that's great. Now you have two people in your corner. But they have no idea who you are. They're not going to make assumptions. It's going to be a much different conversation than someone you already know. And that's pretty powerful, because now here's your clean slate to make an impression on this person to potentially have them help you out. But with all the networking strategy we've been talking about so far, it's also important that you get creative. Whatever I talk about today, don't be afraid to do something on your own, something that's completely outside of what we've talked about. And the thing that I did is I went into my LinkedIn contacts, and at that time I had a couple thousand people I was connected with, but they're obviously not all my best friends. I can't remember all of them. So I went alphabetically by last name. I never got out of the E's. I caught up with a guy by the name of John, last name C. He was roommates with a guy I played soccer with at the University of Delaware. We saw each other at parties every once in a while, but we didn't really hang out. He ended up working at my former organization. We ran parallel lives. We really didn't overlap much, but he ended up coming to the company that I'm at now for my full-time gig. And he said, Tom, sorry, I don't have any openings, not a lot I can help you out with, but have you reached out to, and I'm not kidding, Michael, and Michael, all from our former organization. And I sent 4 notes out to the Michaels, and I got 2 back immediately. Well, one was from some guy that had been 20 years since he and I worked together. And he said, you see anything you're interested in, you let me know. He sent me a couple links. There was one I was very interested in, the job I ended up getting. 20 years, he and I hadn't talked, but he helped me out. The other guy said, yeah, I think I know your name, but we never really worked together. What can I do for you? I said, I have an interview on Friday with this guy, and I'd like to learn a little bit more about him, about the company, about the culture. And we talked for about a half hour. I end up having the interview, and 30 minutes into the interview, he starts talking to me about the U.S. men's soccer team because he saw I played soccer on my resume, and he started talking about that. Now, I highly recommend not doing this, but I did. I said, hey, is the interview over? Unprofessionally. And he said, yeah, I'm sorry. Yes, it is. I've already had conversations with Michael, and Michael, I'm going to make you an offer. And the reason why I share this is, first of all, there was someone from 20 years I probably would have never thought of by not going alphabetically, but he was a secondary contact because it was John who connected me with this guy. There was a guy that had no idea who I was on paper, but was willing to meet with me, and all of those things came to be for the final decision. Let the good word spread on your behalf. But how do you get started? Well, get a resume. I'm sure all of you are starting to float around resumes. Make sure that you have it current and make sure it's relevant to the people that you're speaking with, and then don't send it. Don't be one of those people that sends their resumes out to everyone for someone who didn't ask for the resume and it sits on my email. I'm going to say something along the lines of the cliche, yeah, I'll put it in my file, and never think about it again. But if you have a real life conversation, you build a strong relationship, and someone during the interview says, hey, why don't you send me your resume? Now there's a reason to do something with it. And if you send it to them immediately, it's sitting there, and now they have a vested interest to do something with it versus just putting it in some file somewhere. It's about that relationship, about that connection. It's important that you make that. But how do you get started? I always have people say, well, isn't it crazy just to talk to somebody you don't know and send a note asking to meet with them? Nope. Do it. Do it all the time. Be upfront. Explain to them, I'd like to network with you. I'd like to build a relationship with you. I'd like to connect. And then you should have a purpose. Why do you want to meet with this person? Now, as much as you want to land a job, your primary purpose is not to land the job. It might be to pick their brains, broaden their business acumen, learn a little bit more about the company, about their culture, bring some information back to a different group, solve a problem, share information, share your expertise with them. All of this is more primary than you finding a job. That should be your ancillary goal. But when you come in with guns a-blazing saying, I've got to let them know I'm going to find a job, it comes across, even if you're fogging it up with other reasons, if you really truly believe that I need this conversation for a job, it's going to come across as desperate. You should share information as the value you can offer for your job. And this is where I lose some people sometimes. This doesn't mean when you have a conversation with this person, it's not some bait and switch that you say, I want to network, and yes, I'm looking for a job. But you can find a natural part in the conversation that says, sure, I'm looking for a job. It's not about not saying it. It's about not having it be your headline, because if it becomes your headline, what you're doing is all of a sudden you're pushing the onus on the other person. Networking is never about you, ever. It's about the other person and building a mutually beneficial relationship with that person. And if it comes across as too desperate, you're not going to build that relationship because it's all about you, me. Don't do that. Build it in a way that is all about them. And when you do it that way, you can then say, oh, it's interesting. I have some value to add, and let me tell you some experiences that will do. Now you're bringing it into the conversation, and it's an active part. Well, how do you communicate with this person? Well, if you have internal access to communications, maybe you're at a job and you can, like, Outlook can tell you their availability. Fantastic. That's great. I would skip the email and go straight to the appointment if you can do it through Outlook. By doing that, they have one of three things. They can accept, they can decline, they can move in and accept it, and two of the three are good. If you don't have that option, what it does is it keeps the email from going back and forth. What you don't want to do is say, can we meet? And they say, sure. You say, what time? And they're like, whatever time. And it goes back and forth. Try to minimize that back and forth. It's about building convenience. Remember the 99% I've been doing over the phone or video? Make it a 30-minute conversation. Anyone can find 30 minutes anytime during the week, even if for those really busy people. Do it over the phone, do it by WebEx, Zoom, whatever you want to do it. But in your communication to them, you get one sentence about you, your elevator sentence. You know, how are you connected into this relationship with this person? You know, but you could talk about your past, you could talk about previous experiences you have. Here's what I would suggest against is the number of years you've been doing something and your previous title. My first sentence used to be, I was an SVP at Senior Vice President at Bank of America for 23 years. That one sentence aged me and priced me out. After being with the same company for 23 years, that's what people see. They couldn't get past any experience I had, blah, 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 after. Bring your experience in, and I'll change my messaging, whether it's coaching or consulting for one group, I'll have it banking for another. You change it based on the individual. It's important that you match what you're trying to accomplish with the individual. The second sentence is, how are you connected? Did John say you'd be a great person to connect with Jane? If that's the case, that's fantastic. What I will suggest is, unless John is really adamant about making this connection to Jane, go to Jane straight ahead. And say, Jane, John said you'd be a great person to speak with. The reason for that is, well, John might not be on your urgent timeline that you are. John may communicate something that just doesn't jive well between everyone. Or more importantly, when three people get this message, three people awkwardly try to figure out what to do with that message. John says, oh, I want you to meet Tom and Jane. They're great people. And then John and Tom both say, oh, that was nice. Nice to meet you virtually. Thank you, John. And then you're like, Jane, I'll send you another note. There's very awkward communications. Go straight to Jane. If Jane wants to pick up the phone and call John after the fact, fantastic. You get two people in your corner at that point. You do it on your timeline. You have a little bit more control of the messaging. But your second line is, Jane, John said you'd be a great person to meet with, or however you're connected. I saw you on LinkedIn. I saw you speak at one point. Whatever that connection is, make that connection, because you're starting to make it about them. The third sentence is why them, that they're an expert in this field, that you work at this organization, that I'm really interested to hear more about, whatever it may be, but it's all about that person. In sales, it's that hook that people talk about in the sales job. The fourth sentence says, here are two or three available times that work for me. If they work for you, fantastic. You're trying to make it convenient, very easy for them to say yes. I would add a sentence that says, I'd like to do this virtually, either by phone or by Zoom or by WebEx, whatever more convenient for you. And if none of these times work for you, let me know and I'll be flexible with my time. So it's important that you make those pieces in there, but it's a very short, compact email. It's not some narrative about how you lost your job. You don't want sympathy. As much as we want to continue to dive into the job world, every time you tell someone you lost your job, you're getting sympathy and empathy along with it, and you're losing time and energy. And I'm not trying to be really cold about this. I'm trying to be very pragmatic, that getting sympathy doesn't get you the job. Getting sympathy creates, this emotional connection, but it doesn't connect that relationship. Build the relationship based on the value that you can bring. Make it a forward-looking conversation. And day or two before, write out 5 questions that you want to ask of that person. What motivates them every day? What are your goals or priorities going into next year? What are the roadblocks you're up against? How did you react? How did your company react to COVID? What's changed since that point? That's 4 questions off the top of my head. Write out 5 questions, and if you're having the right conversation, I promise you'll never get past the 3rd one. The questions are there just to keep the conversation moving and that you are prepared for that conversation. But there is a question that you should ask from this day forward for the rest of your life. Who else should I meet with? At the end of every conversation, because they're going to provide names that are probably not on the tip of your tongue. And they're going to point you in a direction where you're no longer making assumptions about yourself. They're helping, based off of the conversation you just had, to lead you in the right direction. That's a leading conversation. That means that you've built a relationship with that person. But it's also important that you're not checking off the box. And what I mean by this is keep in touch. Now, when you meet with someone this month, it doesn't mean that all of a sudden you have to meet with this person plus another person, and then the next month you're meeting with 4. It doesn't work that way. You're going to figure out if you've established a relationship. They may say, call me in 2 weeks, or call me in a month from now, or 3 months from now. If that happens, fantastic. You've established a relationship, but you don't have to do that with everyone. You might have some one and done. The one and done probably gave you a name or 2 or 3 of other people to meet with. So you have plenty of things that you can do with them. And maybe they end up continuing to call back to that person. That's how your network starts to connect together. But it's important that Adam Grant wrote in his book, Give and Take. And if you've never read the book, Give and Take, fantastic book by Adam Grant. But he talks about these dormant contacts, that all these people you have, hundreds or thousands of people on LinkedIn and that are just sitting there. Do something with them is really what it is. It's about that relevancy that we talked about. Well, Kathy calls me about 6 months later after my promotion. She said, how's everything going? I said, it's great. It's fantastic. And she's like, oh, how's Ben and Ted? Well, Ben and Ted were the first 2 HR people I met with. And I said, I have no idea. I haven't talked to them since the first time I spoke to them. She said, oh, you're pretending to network. You're checking off the box. I said, no, but yeah, she was right. So I was going to call Ben and Ted. Well, by calling someone without having an appointment, the good chances are you're going to probably get their answering machine or get their message. I was just going to leave him a message. So I called Ben. Ben picks up. He's like, Tom, how's everything going? How's your new job? I said, it's great, but how do you know about the new job? He said, because I gave your name. I said, well, okay, well, that went well. Well, I was going to call Ted because no one ever picks up the phone. I was going to leave a message. Ted picks up. He's like, Tom, how's everything going? How's the new job? I said, great. How did you know about the new job? He said, because I gave your name. I had established relationships with both of them and had no idea at the time that I had really established them. And it gave me a chance to reestablish myself with them because we had connected. The name they gave me was a guy by the name of Bob. Bob was an industry leader in fraud. Bob was fantastic. He knew a lot. And by the end of the conversation, I was blown away. And I told him that. I was like, Bob, oh my gosh, thank you so much. I learned so much from you in this half hour. Yeah, thank you. I can't believe you had time to even meet with me. I know how busy you are. And he said, Tom, stop. He said, first of all, I already said yes. I'm here. We met. And I said, oh yeah. And the second thing was, I was so concerned about meeting a senior vice president and SVP. I forgot I was talking to a person. And he said, people typically love talking about their business. They love talking about their world. And when you get them excited about it, you're building a connection with that person. And that's what it's really all about, is building that connection with that person and making sure that you are connecting. So I know we've talked a lot about networking strategies here, but I'm going to open it up to questions. I'm going to go to the chat and see what's popping in there, see if there's any questions that we want to get to. Do you advise reaching out to HR hiring managers on LinkedIn? The answer is yes, yes, and when I'm done saying yes, I say yes again. I will give you an example. Last year, about a year and a half ago, I had a toxic work environment with a manager I did not like, so I was poking around. And I got to an organization. They had 100 pages worth of people. I knew 15 of them from former connections, so I connected with several of those 15, but I wanted to go a different route and connect with a recruiter in a specific area, so I went searching. There were 100 pages, 10 names per page. And you're like, oh man, that's a lot of people you're going through. Yep, it is. The whole incident took 5 minutes. I got to page 100 and I saw this person. I connected with her. We were having a conversation 24 hours later. And I always suggest now, if you catch up with a recruiter that's not in your hometown and you want your job in your hometown near Boston as an example, and they're out in California, so what is my only response? Connect with that recruiter. And if they say, well, you know, I'm out here in California, but I like your skill set and I know what's going on, 30,000 foot broad view. Yes, absolutely connect with that person and say, well, is there someone locally I can talk to? And then they connect you with that HR recruiter that's near you. That's how connections work. Absolutely, 100%. If you don't know anyone who works at the company, reach out to an HR person or recruiter. Now, they are up to their eyeballs in work right now. They are really busy. So if you send a note out to a really big company, to one HR or recruiter, don't sit there and wait and hope that they get back in touch with you. Look for a couple others. Play the odds in your favor. Let's see what else we got. Thank you, Ryan. I have often found that in between job hunting periods were truly great experiences due to people I met with. Absolutely. And they hopefully remain continued connections during that time. Are you referring to HM and who I think is the HM? Hiring manager. Now, if you think you know who the hiring manager is, that's great. If it's not typically made public for an external candidate. But if you know who it is, absolutely connect with them. Connect with as many people as you possibly can, and connect with people within the company prior to the interview, prior to speaking to the hiring manager. It's all about making those connections, understanding the things that are going on, understanding the company, the culture, understanding if you have the advantage to learn a little bit more about the job. Why did somebody leave? Maybe they were a bad manager. Maybe you can heighten those skills as part of the conversation you have with them. I always say it's really good to make those connections and help to prepare for an interview if you were lucky enough to get one. So what other questions do you have out there? And you can take yourselves off of mute as well. You don't necessarily have to go through the written piece here. Somebody put in here, networking within the HR community is very limited. I would say be careful of broad strokes. Everything is at the individual level. It only takes that one person to respond back to you to say, can I help you? And that's all that it takes. So, there are HR people are very busy. When you're looking through, if you really want to hone in your search, look for recruiters. Recruiters live and die by getting you hired for their company. That's their job. So they have a very vested interest in getting back in touch with you. So a lot of cases with the recruiters, understanding how busy they are, instead of asking for 30 minutes, if I'm finding difficulty in getting a hold of someone, I'll say, hey, can I get 15 minutes on your calendar to understand a little bit more about your organization? Now, I do want to differentiate here when you're sending a note out to somebody. If you're sending it out to someone you know, love, and trust, they know that you're looking for a job. Absolutely. Hey, I'm looking for a job. Best friend from high school. Can you help me out? Yeah, absolutely. Let them know you're doing it. With recruiters and HR people, let them know you're looking for a job. Cut straight to the chase and let them know exactly what's happening. For everyone else, it's that secondary contact of I want to learn more about the company. I want to learn a little bit more about the organization or the culture, and that piece, that hook to speak specifically to that person. When you're talking to secondary contacts, again, you don't want to put pressure on someone to say, can you do something for me? And they don't even know who you are. As subtle as that sounds, don't make it your headline, because I found by doing that, you're cutting down the number of responses pretty significantly when you say, I need a job, can you help me? And maybe that's a little bit part of it. But on the HR front, maybe that's not their expertise, is recruiting. So suggestion is, if you're not getting responses from HR people, go through the recruiters. Any other questions that are out there?
And as Tom said, if anyone wants to ask a question via audio or video, feel free to unmute. Well, maybe we have a shy audience today. Oh, here's a question from Teresa. When reaching out, should you leave your LinkedIn URL in the signature line? I think that's what that means.
Yeah, so that's a really good question in a lot of different ways. When you send a note to somebody, if you are connected with that person on LinkedIn, you actually have access to their email address. So underneath their picture and their name, there's a little line that says contact information. Click on that contact information and you'll see their Twitter handle. If they put that in there, you'll see their phone number if they add it in there. And 99.9% of the time, you will see an email address for them. My personal preference for my first reach out to this person is via email. And by going through email, you can send an attachment if it's relevant and they ask for it ahead of time. You can have an email signature that includes all of that information, including your LinkedIn. Be careful of the number of links that you have attached to your email signature, or it gets thrown in junk a lot of times. So try to limit it to 1 or 2. Have your email address, your phone number, your contact information on there. And then if you're sending a lot of these out, by sending email, you can copy and paste it right in and then massage it based off of the individual message you want to send to that specific individual. But I found it a little bit more efficient to go via email. When I get a LinkedIn message, you get something that says, you have a LinkedIn message from John. All right, I don't know what it is. I don't know what it's about. I click on it. It brings me to LinkedIn. I have to log in. I then go to it. 99% of the time, I find out it's a solicitation, and I'm not really happy about it. So I found that by going through LinkedIn, a lot of people have that cynical approach to it. By going to email, my response rates have typically been a lot higher in doing that. And then as a follow-up, if I really want to get in touch with this person, I haven't heard back in a couple of weeks, I'll send them a note via LinkedIn saying, hey, I sent you a note via email. Sometimes it gets caught in junk folders. Hey, I'd love to get 30 minutes on your calendar, and then tidy up your email so it's a little shorter and see if you get a response there as the follow-up. It's a great way to have those two things moving. But using your LinkedIn profile, I like to put that on the link on my resume as well. People are going to be looking for you, whether you like it or not. So you might as well make it, again, it's about making it convenient and easy for them to get to it. Put it on there and let them go through it as much as they want. What up?
So Kelly says this has been super helpful. Thank you, Tom. Teresa also thanks you. Jane says excellent information. Depthi says thank you. Let's see. Cindy says thank you. So any last questions or comments for Tom before we wrap up, folks?
No, I would just say that it was excellent because you covered a lot of the nuances that are really important in terms of the communications. And I really liked your headline example, and, just a lot of things, even with, the delicacy of sending an email and mentioning junk mail. Those are just really important. Just the nuances are incredibly important. So thank you.
You're too kind. Thank you. And there's another question in here on any tips for older workers. I am 54 years old. When I lost my job, I was 45 years old. Depends on who you ask and whether you consider that older or not. But once you cross over the 40 bridge, people consider you on the older side of it. And my suggestion for the older side is to make sure that those blatant things that age you are removed from your LinkedIn and removed from your LinkedIn and resume. So I no longer say what year I graduated from college. I no longer said, hey, I was been with the same company for 23 years. It's important that, listen, titles. Some people get really honed in on a title. I was SVP at Bank of America. Bank of America handed out SVPs like it was candy. SVP at my current organization is a direct report into the CEO. Completely different levels of responsibility, but people don't know that on the inside outside. Make sure that you're speaking the language of the job that you're looking for. Look up the job descriptions that are there. When it comes to older workers looking for jobs, You bring value, you bring wisdom, and it's important that people see the value. There are three things that hiring managers are looking for, and none of them are age. One, skills. What skills can you bring along with you? And with 60 plus years, you're bringing a lot of skills. Competencies. What are you competent in doing for them? And make sure that that's spelled out in the interview, on your resume, in LinkedIn. And the other one is accomplishment. A leopard never changes its spots. There is a reason why they will ask you in interviews, give me a time when, give me an example when. If you are on the older side of it, you should actually begin with answering the question of, yeah, I have really good communication skills, and let me give you a time when I had to use them, and then you can give that answer. You're supporting your information with solid stories. You're presenting your information with things that you were able to do. The age thing is a tricky thing because you're going to have conscious and unconscious biases. It's the truth. It's reality. But what they can't take away from you is all the things that you were able to accomplish along with it. What you don't want to do is live in the past. If you say, well, I don't know what to do on WebEx, I don't know what to do on Zoom, you're instantly telling people that maybe you're not a consummate learner, you're not willing to put the work in to do it. What you should do as an older worker is tell people that you have, that you're good with technology, that you've practiced with COVID. Here are the things that you've done to build, to build teams, to get projects done in the middle of a pandemic, using video along the way, systems that you had to learn. You're trying to show people that you are eager to learn things, regardless of how old you are. That's what people want to see, is a consummate learner. And by the way, in your, however old you are, in the years of travels, if you've made mistakes in an interview or in a networking session, it's okay to be vulnerable. The hiring manager is not looking for the perfect candidate. That's what the job description is all about, which, by the way, doesn't exist. But when you say this is something that I've learned because of it, they see that wisdom that they're looking for, someone who can come in. And if you're on the older side, if you communicate it the right way, you're communicating in a way that I don't have to be around here for a long time. I'm doing it for these reasons, good reasons. And the sole reason isn't because of pay, although it probably doesn't hurt, but because I want to help do something. And here's some answers that help to support it. But they're probably putting a timeline on the end of when they think you might retire, which means that they get you for a short period of time to teach the younger workers, which is probably lacking significantly because we told everyone just go take some online training, and which probably didn't connect with everyone. Be that person that can lead. Be that person that can go in and teach people the ways of the world and be that wisdom. If they're going to call you wise, sure, be wise. And say, listen, I plan on being here for maybe 5, 10 years. It depends on who you're talking to, whether you choose to use that or not. But I'll be here 5 to 10 years. And here's what I'd like to do. I'd like to give back to all the people that have been giving to me as a mentor, as a leader, whatever it is. Show that extreme piece. So that was a really long-winded answer to what to do for people that are on the older side. But let's see, Grandma Moses started her prestigious career as an elderly citizen. Yeah. So I'll share a quick story here. We had a gentleman. I started in collections, credit card collections on the phone. And I was sitting next to a guy much older, probably in his mid-70s at that point, probably low 70s. And he was good. He did okay. I mean, he did what he needed to do. And he said, just doing this out of retirement and stuff. And we start to figure out, he worked with Mother Teresa. The Mother Teresa. And you start to realize that he was in philanthropic activities. He did a ton for the community. He ended up becoming the director of our community group within the company. And so when you're starting off, sometimes it's just about getting the foot in the door. And then people get to know the real you and what you can bring along with the skills that are specific to the job. It's that broader piece that a lot of on the older generation are able to give. So yeah, Grandma Moses, among others, have found a significant amount of success later in their career. And all you have to do is look at Betty White as an example. Show you're relevant and knowledgeable despite your age. Yeah, it's all about skills, competencies, and accomplishments. So I know we have just a couple minutes left, but anything before we wrap up? Anything else I can help with? All right. Well, I wish you the best of luck. I know it's not easy as you're looking for a job. It is a hot job market in a lot of cases. Make sure that you're looking at the industries that are really looking for people. Show that willingness to learn, and don't be afraid to go to take some classes online or volunteer and learn the skills. I spoke to somebody last week and spent 2 hours with them. And their first question to me is, well, how do I explain my gap? And I said, what gap? They said because I haven't been paid for a job in 20 years. My husband died. I said, but first of all, I was sorry about the husband side of it, but I said, where's the gap? And she said, but I was volunteering. It's irrelevant. Skills, competencies, and accomplishments. Those are the things that you want to bring someone else. Do you have a digital reading list that includes the books you mentioned? You can. Let's see. Give and Take by Adam Grant is a really good one. Never Eat Alone by Keith Ferrazzi is a good one. The Keith Ferrazzi one is very salesy in relation, but it's still important. My book, Displacement Day, When My Job Was Looking for a Job, I think it's on Amazon for less than a couple bucks, or 99 for a digital copy of it. Listen, I made my money a while ago. I'm not off looking for money on those things, just enough to cover the cost of sending. So those 3 books would be very helpful with you. There's also, don't be afraid to look for some communication books and build out your own confidence in your ability to communicate with people. Studies will show time and time again, it's not just what you say, it's how you say it. And it's not about coming across as cocky or arrogant. It's about being confident in your own ability. And for those that are concerned about their age, it will come across in your confidence level. Make sure that you're confident and present what you are all about and stand tall for the people you're communicating with. The how will take you an awful long way. And for those with that type of experience, you're probably really wanted as well. So best of luck in your pursuits, everyone. And I look forward to, feel free to connect with me on LinkedIn. I am on Thomas B. Dowd, and love to connect and hear about all your accomplishments and where you land.
Great. Well, thank you so much, Tom. Yeah. Excellent job as expected. Thanks for coming back and speaking with the group. So folks, look for an email from me later today with a recording, a feedback survey, and information about next week's talk. Next week, we're going to learn how to cope with job loss and stress. And that's going to be with certified life coach Ann Crawford. She specializes in career transitions, and like Tom, Ann has spoken to the group multiple times in the past. So hope to see some of you at that one, and I hope everyone enjoys the rest of their day. And regardless of how you vote, make sure you go out and vote tomorrow if you haven't early voted. So thank you all so much, and I hope everyone enjoys the rest of their night. Bye-bye, Tom. Thanks so much.
Bye, Robert.